I just want you to know that I have filmed this review about 3 times, and every time there's been something wrong, so here's hoping that this time will pull through. I don't know, cross your fingers for me. I want to talk about Romanov, as you could tell from the title and the thumbnail of this video. If you aren't on the up and up, Romanov is a book by Nadine, a pal of mine on old Bookstagram, and I have really enjoyed getting to know her. She has this incredibly light, bubbly, wonderful personality, but I will also say it's very hard to agree to review your friend's books, but I did it anyway because it's Russia and I love Russian history. As you probably already know, I'm kind of like a nerd about it. I just think that it's just really fascinating. It's just an interesting time and an interesting place, obviously. This is a young adult historical fiction slash fantasy. It comes out in May, near the end of May, I think the 27th. No, the 7th, May 7th. 7th. I got one number right. That should count for something. So I'm a little ahead of the game and quite proud of myself, and I just want to say thank you to Thomas Nelson and Nadine for sending this book out way early so that I had time to read it before the actual release date. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. So let's get into this little quick, honest, spoiler-free review. Let's do it. You're probably familiar, at least a little bit, with the Anastasia story. I'm going to give you a 5-second history lesson, which is that all you need to know for this book and for this whole concept is that in 1918 or 1917 actually, there were 2 revolutions in Russia. The first ruined or displaced the 300-year reign of the Tsars, who were the Romanovs. The second one put the Bolsheviks in power. So that was 1917. In 1918, the entire Romanov family was unfortunately horribly executed. It was a very horrible, dangerous time in Russian history. People were trying to find a new balance. Power that had been in place for 300 years was suddenly not there anymore. There was a lot of different loyalties going on, and it was just a very messy, bloody, horrific, tragic time in history. The Tsar at the time, Nicholas, had children, of course, and his youngest daughter was named Anastasia. There's a fantastic movie that I really enjoyed from back in the day called literally Anastasia, and I'm sure you watched it at some point, but if you haven't, it's fun, go watch it. That's how most of the world knows the Anastasia lore, or the myth surrounding Anastasia. Basically, the idea or the theory was that while all the other Romanovs in the family were executed by firing squad, it was very awful. The theory that came forth from this really awful event is that Anastasia and her brother, who would have been the heir to the Tsar reign, Alexei. The idea for this had to do with the way their bodies were disposed of, and it took a long time for Anastasia and Alexei's bodies to be found. So we know that all this lore and this myth is not accurate, it's not true. However, there was a lot of years where we did not have the answer to that, and a lot of sort of conspiracy theories, if you will, or whatever, were sort of invented, and there's a lot of myth and lore surrounding Anastasia and how she might have survived and gone on after her family's execution. There was also a woman who claimed to be Anastasia, and that was also proved false. So there's just a lot of like myth and lore surrounding this, a lot of legend that's been created from a really tragic, horrible event. Let's not lie to ourselves. Conspiracy theories and all that is really fun, and it's entertaining, and it's just a nice way to imagine things. It's sometimes a hopeful way to imagine things, because it would be nice if it was true that some part of the Romanov reign had moved forward, you know? So I totally get why it happens, and I totally get why people are obsessed with it, myself included. So that is really what interested me in Romanov when Nadine reached out to me about it. I said that that was going to be a 5-second history lesson, but it turned out I needed more time than that. I just wanted to make sure that if you weren't familiar with this, you had some idea going into it. What Nadine has done with Romanov is reimagined and thrown some magic into this story about how Anastasia might have survived. And she's telling it in her own unique way. Nadine's book did something really smart in that she put the plot line in a segment of time, a period of time that's different than most of the legend and lore, which I thought was really smart because so much of the legend and myth exists years afterward or right afterward, and I liked that she focused on this different section of time. What Nadine did, instead of focusing on years later, was she focused on the time leading up to the Romanov execution by firing squad, which was in July of 1918. So she is really sharing the true story for about half of this book, a really true sad story about the Romanovs in captivity and their incredible faith and hope and just steadfastness of character in the face of some pretty tough times. And then the second half of the novel is more of the magic, more of the young adult angle, more of the adventure story that comes forward from this. I really respected the way that she split it up like that, that we have half history, half fantasy, and I just think that's a nice mashup, especially for a young adult novel, because it's telling the truth, but it's also making it really approachable and fun. I mentioned this book was published by Thomas Nelson, which is a Christian publisher. So that gave me a little bit, I was a little nervous, and I shouldn't have been, but I was just a little nervous of that this book, which covers really a dark, gory, horrible, tragic time, as I mentioned, I was afraid that they would take all the truth of that and the lessons learned from history and just how hard it was and how difficult that time was. I was afraid that they would take that and candy coat it, make it, I don't know, just soft and fluffy and nice for the younger YA audience. I just don't believe in, I guess, rewriting history that way, or in particular lying to the public about what history was. I wanted it to be kept real and keep the integrity of that time in history. And I was nervous that it would just be kind of manipulated too much in a YA sense, but I was very pleased to be completely proven wrong about any inkling that I was worried about before I started reading this. It was clear right off the bat that Nadine really respected this time in history and the Russian people and their culture and this story enough to give it its due diligence. She didn't hold back any punches, but she also managed to make it approachable for a younger audience in that, yeah, it's bloody and gory, and she doesn't lie about that. She doesn't lie about the hardships, but it's written in this really approachable style and really approachable language that makes it just a breeze to read, and I think perfect for a young adult audience. That being said, I do think that this is a book that is certainly enjoyable for an adult to read. Many adults read YA, but they are designed for young adults. This is one book that I think serves that purpose very well. I have an inkling that it's going to inspire sort of a history lesson in lots of young readers. They might really get interested in history because of this book, and that's something I really like to see. I liked reading it as an adult, there's no question about that, but I also couldn't help but notice that my 12 to 14-year-old self probably would have been absolutely obsessed with this book, and so I really think it's serving its genre of YA very well. There is a little bit of a gentle, sweet romance angle. It's not overdone, it's just sort of sweet, innocent, young love, and that's one thing I do like about it being from a Christian publisher, is that it's appropriate in that sense, and it doesn't detract from the main storyline, which you know is something I don't like. I don't like when romance is the entire plot. So it's there, it's a cute little angle, it adds some dimension, but it's not overbearing at all. On a final note, I'll just say that I think Romanov was written with grace and hope at its center. I think there's incredible themes of forgiveness at the core of this story, and that's a really powerful thing. It's about steadfastness of faith and having a sense of permanence in a tumultuous time through your core being and through your family and through who you are as a person. Those are powerful messages for any age reader. There are times in this book where I actually got emotional, which is powerful for a YA, especially when the language is simple and approachable to read, but it can still tug at your heartstrings a little bit. And I just think this is a great YA to read, particularly if you are a teen, or if you know a teen, or someone who's interested in the Anastasia lore and myth. This is a great one to add on. It never encroaches on the existing Anastasia legend. If someone's really into that, it just sort of puts its own chapter and its own little piece of the lore in, and I love that she did it that way. I gave this 8 out of 10 stars, and there is a full proper review on my blog, but you get the gist. If you do want to read it, it comes out May 7th this year, just around the corner. You can go ahead and pre-order it, and then it's like a surprise for your future self when it finally comes. If you like this video, give it a quick thumbs up, drop a comment below, let me know if you're interested in the Anastasia or Romanov history at all, if you're interested in this book, and if you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, but you like all things bookish, book reviews, TBRs, hauls, wrap-ups, all the good bookish stuff, then I'm your girl. So go ahead and press that subscribe button, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye, guys.